It was supposed to be the proudest morning in Umgroved. The California desert shimmered under the sharp winter sun as hundreds of soldiers stood in formation at Fort Irwin. Flags flapped, medals gleamed, cameras clicked. Dr. Evelyn Carter, 5 months pregnant, adjusted her crisp white uniform and took a steady breath. Today, she was being honored for her service as a military psychologist, the youngest officer in her unit to ever receive the Medal of Valor. Her husband, General Marcus Hale, waited at the podium, jaw tight, eyes unreadable. She thought it was nerves. She didn't know that this ceremony would end her life as she knew it. Captain Carter, his voice boomed through the speakers, stepped forward. Every eye followed her as she approached. She caught a glimpse of Captain Naomi Brooks, Marcus's communications officer, standing to the side, lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Evelyn felt a flicker of unease but pushed it down. When she reached the podium, Marcus didn't hand her the medal. Instead, he took her service folder from an aide and flipped it open for everyone to see. "This officer," he said coldly, "has violated the ethical standards of our command. Evidence suggests misconduct, personal and professional." The air split, soldiers shifted uncomfortably, cameras zoomed closer. Evelyn froze, her heart hammering. "Marcus, what are you doing?" She whispered. He didn't look at her. "You have dishonored this uniform, Captain. You are hereby suspended pending investigation." A murmur rolled through the ranks like thunder. Reporters started scribbling notes. Naomi stepped closer, pretending to comfort Evelyn, then leaned in and whispered, "Smile for the camera, sweetheart." Evelyn's vision blurred. Her throat tightened. She reached for the podium to steady herself, but Marcus turned his back. The medal that was supposed to hang on her chest now lay on the floor, glinting in the dust. No one moved to help her. In the crowd, Colonel Liam Ward clenched his fists. He was the only one who knew the truth, and the secret Evelyn had sworn to keep. She wasn't just another officer. She was the adopted daughter of General Alexander Ford, founder of Military Intelligence Unit 1, a man powerful enough to shake the entire Pentagon. But Marcus didn't know that. Not yet. Evelyn bent down, picked up the medal with trembling hands, and walked off the stage in silence. Every step echoed through the loudspeakers. Her eyes, once full of hope, now burned with something colder. Resolve. As she reached the exit, a junior soldier slipped her a folded note. Just 4 words. "He's being watched. Run." Evelyn turned slightly, her gaze meeting Marcus's across the hall. For a second he looked uneasy. Then he smiled at Naomi and shook hands with the press. Outside, the wind howled through the parade ground, scattering dust and ribbons across the concrete. Evelyn gripped the medal until its edges cut into her palm. Somewhere behind her she heard cameras clicking, capturing her disgrace. But deep inside, beneath the humiliation and heartbreak, something ancient and dangerous stirred. The part of her trained not just to heal minds, but to read them, expose them, destroy them if necessary. The general had made a public spectacle of her. He thought it was the end. He had no idea it was only the beginning. The story broke before the sun rose. By 6 a.m., every military blog and local news site carried the same headline: "Pregnant officer suspended for misconduct." Evelyn Carter's name flashed across screens inside the base cafeteria, across the Pentagon's internal network, even on the morning show playing inside a Starbucks off base. Soldiers whispered as if she had turned into a ghost overnight. In her small government apartment, Evelyn sat motionless on the couch, still in the wrinkled uniform from the ceremony. The medal lay on the coffee table beside a cold cup of black coffee. The television replayed Marcus's statement. "The Army must hold itself to the highest moral code." His voice was calm, righteous, almost holy. Her phone vibrated nonstop. Reporters, colleagues, unknown numbers. She powered it off. When she opened her laptop to check her account, the system rejected her password. Her email was gone. Her medical profile had been deleted. The words on the screen felt like ice. Access denied. She was being erased. At noon, a loud knock startled her. 2 MPs stood at the door. "Ma'am, we're here to escort you for questioning." Their tone was polite, rehearsed, mechanical. Evelyn followed silently, her belly heavy under her coat. They led her through the base corridors where she had counseled hundreds of soldiers on PTSD, trust, loyalty. Now every door seemed to close a little faster as she passed. In the interrogation room, Colonel Liam Ward waited. His gray eyes flicked toward the cameras mounted on the wall, then back to her. "Keep your answers simple," he murmured. "They're recording everything." The investigator across the table read a list of accusations: misuse of confidential data, fraternization, psychological instability. Each word chipped away at her composure. Evelyn felt the room spin. "This is insane," she said. "Someone planted those reports." The investigator didn't blink. "Evidence points to you, Captain." When the session ended, Liam escorted her out. In the hallway, he whispered, "They're building a case to discharge you quietly. You need to stay off the grid." That night, she packed what little she owned into a duffel bag: uniforms, prenatal vitamins, a framed photo of her mother. Outside, the desert wind scraped against the windows like sandpaper. She drove to a cheap motel 2 hours away near Barstow, paying cash. The sign flickered vacancy in red. Inside the room, she sat on the bed and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked pale, almost unrecognizable. She touched her stomach gently. "It's just us now," she whispered. Then the motel phone rang. No one was supposed to know she was there. Her pulse spiked. She let it ring twice before answering. A deep, static-laced voice said, "He's not done, Evelyn. He's deleting you for real this time." Click. The line went dead. She yanked open the curtains. Across the parking lot, a black SUV idled with its headlights off. She stepped back, breathing fast. The vehicle rolled away slowly, disappearing into the highway darkness. Evelyn sank to the floor, clutching her phone. She wanted to call her father, General Ford, but his number was classified. Contacting him would expose her connection and end his career. She couldn't risk it. Instead, she opened her notebook and began to write page after page: names, dates, suspicions, details. Marcus never thought she noticed. Each line steadied her heartbeat. When she finished, she tore the first page out, folded it, and slid it into her boot. If they came for her tonight, at least one piece of truth would survive. Outside, thunder rolled across the desert sky. Evelyn lay on the bed, eyes wide open, listening for footsteps. Somewhere out there, her husband was cleaning his image. Somewhere closer, someone was watching her window. The pain started just after midnight, sharp, low, and relentless. Evelyn woke to find a thin line of sweat across her forehead and a dull cramp twisting her stomach. She counted her breaths, trying to calm herself, but the pressure wouldn't stop. Panic surged through her chest. Her baby wasn't due for another 4 months. She grabbed her coat, stumbled out of the motel, and drove through the desert rain. The highway lights blurred past like ghosts. When she reached the nearest hospital in Victorville, she rushed inside, clutching her belly. "Please," she gasped. "I'm 5 months pregnant. Something's wrong." The nurse at reception glanced up, her smile tight and mechanical. "Name?" "Evelyn Carter," she said. The nurse typed quickly, frowned, and looked back up. "We don't have a record of you. Are you sure you're registered here?" "I just need help," Evelyn cried. The nurse hesitated, then nodded toward a hallway. "Exam room 4. A doctor will be with you shortly." Evelyn lay on the cold bed, hands trembling. The fluorescent lights hummed. Minutes dragged on until the door opened. A tall man in scrubs walked in, face partly hidden behind a mask. His badge read Dr. Kenner. "Good evening, Captain Carter," he said smoothly, as if he'd been expecting her. Her pulse jumped. "How do you know I'm—" He interrupted. "Relax. Just a routine check. We'll need to give you something to help with the contractions." He pulled a syringe from his pocket. The liquid inside shimmered pale blue under the light. Evelyn's instincts screamed. "What is that?" "A mild sedative," he said, stepping closer. Before she could react, the door burst open. Colonel Liam Ward stormed in, a gun drawn. "Step away from her," he barked. The doctor froze. "Who are you?" "Military intelligence," Liam snapped, flashing a badge. 2 men in tactical gear followed him, seizing the syringe. Liam turned to Evelyn. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, speechless. The supposed doctor tried to run, but the soldiers pinned him down. Liam picked up the syringe and held it to the light. "This isn't a sedative," he muttered. "It's a uterine induction agent, enough to cause a miscarriage in minutes." Evelyn's stomach dropped. Her hands went numb. "He was going to." Liam nodded grimly. "Aegis Corp's fingerprints are all over this. Hale's cleaning up loose ends." The doctor snarled from the floor. "You can't stop him. He owns everyone above you." Liam slammed him against the wall. "We'll see about that." He turned back to Evelyn, his voice softening. "You need to disappear for a while. I can get you out tonight. As security swarmed the hallway, Liam helped her outside through a side exit. The desert air hit cold against her face. Rain streaked across the parking lot like silver threads. He opened the passenger door of a black SUV and gestured for her to get in. They drove in silence, headlights cutting through the storm. Evelyn stared out the window, her reflection fractured in the glass. "He tried to kill my child," she whispered. "He won't stop there," Liam said quietly. "Marcus Hale has powerful friends, but he also has enemies. One of them sent me a message, something about a project called Operation Mirror. I think it's what he's hiding." Evelyn turned to him. "Then let's find it." Liam glanced at her, almost smiling. "You sound like your father." She froze. "You know about him?" "Of course. I served under General Ford before you were adopted. He told me if you ever called for help, I should protect you at all costs." The car sped through the endless dark, rain hammering the roof. Evelyn pressed her hand against her stomach, feeling a faint kick. Life. Fragile, but defiant. When they reached a checkpoint near the state line, Liam killed the headlights. "Stay down," he whispered. Outside, another black SUV waited on the road, its engine idling, lights off. Evelyn's heart pounded. "Is that them?" Liam's hand hovered over his holster. "We'll find out." Two sets of headlights flickered in the rain, facing each other like predators about to strike. By dawn, the storm had cleared, but the air inside Evelyn's chest still felt heavy as wet sand. She hadn't slept. Liam parked the SUV outside a coffee shop near the freeway, handed her a steaming cup, and said quietly, "They're planning something bigger? Watch the news." On the television inside, the morning anchor's voice sliced through the static. "Breaking story. General Marcus Hale to hold a press conference today at the Ritz-Carlton in Los Angeles. Sources say he'll issue a public apology regarding the recent misconduct scandal." Evelyn's stomach turned. A public apology meant a trap. She had seen it before in her work. Control the narrative, crush the victim, then bury the truth. "Should I show up?" she asked. Liam hesitated. "They'll expect you not to, that's why you should." He handed her a folder. Inside was a forged pass with her name still intact, Captain Evelyn Carter, Behavioral Health Division. Beneath it, a handwritten note. "Trust your instincts. Stay calm." At noon, the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton shimmered with gold chandeliers and 100 curious eyes. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters scribbled, hungry for scandal. Marcus stood at the podium in full uniform, every metal polished to mirror perfection. Naomi Brooks hovered at his side, immaculate in her navy suit, holding cue cards. When Evelyn entered, whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. Some turned away, others lifted their phones to film. She walked slowly, each step steady, though her knees trembled. Liam stayed by the door, pretending to be a staff guard. Marcus began with his rehearsed voice of authority. "Leadership demands accountability. Today, I wish to clarify misunderstandings that have damaged the reputation of our division." He paused, letting the flashbulbs ignite. "Captain Carter, my wife, was struggling with stress and made mistakes. As her commanding officer, I failed to see it. For that, I apologize to the institution." A soft gasp swept the room. It wasn't an apology to her. It was an apology for her, a rewrite of truth. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. Naomi leaned toward the mic, smiling sweetly. "Captain Carter, would you like to say something?" The cameras pivoted. Dozens of lenses stared at her, hungry for tears. Evelyn stepped forward, heart pounding in her ears. "General Hale is right about one thing," she said, voice shaking but clear. "He failed to see what was happening." Marcus's jaw tensed. "That's enough, Evelyn." "No," she interrupted. "It's not enough." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a flash drive Liam had given her. "This contains communication logs from Fort Irwin's internal servers, messages between the general and a private defense contractor named Aegis Corp." Gasps erupted. Reporters leaned forward. Marcus turned pale. "You don't know what you're talking about." Evelyn's eyes burned with unshed tears. "You tried to erase me, Marcus, but digital ghosts never die." Naomi lunged forward, snatching the drive from Evelyn's hand. "This woman's unstable," she cried. "She's under psychiatric review." Liam stepped out from the corner, flashing his ID. "Military intelligence. That drive is evidence. Hand it over." Chaos exploded, reporters shouting, flashes blinding, Marcus yelling orders that no one obeyed. Evelyn backed away, her pulse racing. Then, from behind her, a young tech reporter whispered, Ma'am, I got it all on camera. Liam guided her toward the exit while security scrambled. Outside, sunlight hit her face for the first time in days. Her hands shook as she whispered, "They'll come after us." "They already are," Liam replied, starting the engine. "But now the world's watching." As the SUV pulled into traffic, Evelyn looked back through the tinted window. Marcus stood at the hotel doors, staring after her, his face twisted with rage. Naomi whispered something in his ear, but his gaze didn't move. He finally understood the one thing he couldn't control. Her silence was gone, and the war had just begun. The city rolled by in flashes of glass and motion. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, staring at the buildings sliding past the Ritz-Carlton's reflection on the window. Her hands trembled, still holding the coffee cup Liam had given her hours ago. The chaos of the press conference echoed in her head like gunfire. Every word, every flash of the cameras replayed on a loop. "They'll bury the footage," she said quietly. Liam drove fast but steady. Not all of it. A few reporters already uploaded clips before security shut them down. The story's out there. It just hasn't exploded yet. Evelyn leaned her head against the seat. "They'll twist it. They'll say I'm unstable." "They already have," Liam said flatly. "That's why we need to move faster." He turned off the freeway, driving into an underground parking garage beneath an old office building. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered weakly. The air smelled of oil and dust. He killed the engine and got out. "Come with me." They walked through a metal door that led to a dim corridor. At the end was a room filled with outdated computer servers, their lights blinking faintly like dying stars. On the desk sat a single black folder labeled Operation Mirror. Evelyn frowned. "What is this?" Liam opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, satellite images, and signed memos, each one connecting Marcus Hale to Aegis Corp. "This is what he's been hiding," Liam said. Operation Mirror was a covert project that redirected military psychological data to private defense contractors. They used soldiers' mental health records to design new interrogation software. Illegal, classified, and profitable. Evelyn's stomach turned. "He used my division's data?" "Yes," Liam said. "You oversaw that data. That's why he had to erase you. He couldn't risk anyone tracing it back." She stepped closer to the desk, scanning the documents. The evidence was damning. Bank transfers, encrypted messages, even a confidential memo signed by Marcus himself. "Why not take this to the Pentagon?" she asked. Liam shook his head. "Because the system is compromised. Marcus has allies everywhere. If this gets to the wrong hands, it disappears. You've seen what he's willing to do." Evelyn swallowed hard. "So what's the plan?" He looked at her, eyes heavy with fatigue. "You'll keep this file. I'll stay behind to make noise. File complaints, draw attention. While they chase me, you find someone you can trust to get this to the top without it vanishing." She shook her head. "No, you can't do that alone." "I can," he said. "Because they think you're broken, not dangerous. That's our advantage." Before she could respond, a faint beep echoed from one of the old computers. The screen lit up with an incoming transmission, an anonymous message. It read, "Move now, he knows where you are." Liam grabbed the folder and shoved it into a waterproof bag. They must have tracked the drive from the hotel. "We're leaving." They sprinted back through the hallway, the sound of tires screeching above. When they reached the garage, 2 black SUVs blocked the exit. Armed men stepped out, private security, not military. "Stay behind me," Liam ordered. He pulled his sidearm, scanning for cover. The men advanced. One shouted, "Give us the file!" Evelyn's mind raced. She spotted a maintenance ladder leading to a vent shaft. "Up there!" she shouted. Liam nodded, firing 2 warning shots to create confusion. They climbed quickly, the sound of bullets echoing below. By the time they reached the roof, sirens wailed in the distance. Liam handed her the folder bag. "Go east," he said. "There's a contact in D.C. named Mason Cole. He's ex-military counsel. Tell him everything." Evelyn hesitated. "What about you?" Liam smiled faintly. "I'll make sure they follow the wrong trail." Below, gunfire erupted. She looked once more at the man who had risked everything for her. Then she ran, the wind slicing her face, the city stretching ahead like a labyrinth of steel and betrayal. Behind her, the night exploded, and with it, every illusion of safety she had left. Rain started to fall again as Evelyn ran through the maze of alleys behind the garage, clutching the waterproof bag to her chest. The folder inside felt heavier than it should have. like it carried the weight of 1,000 buried sins. She didn't stop until she reached the back entrance of a diner near the freeway. Its neon sign buzzed weakly, spelling out 24 hours. She slid into a booth at the corner, breathing hard. The waitress, a kind-looking woman with tired eyes, poured her a cup of coffee. "You okay, honey?" Evelyn forced a nod. "Just tired." As the waitress walked away, Evelyn pulled out her laptop. The screen flickered to life, still logged into a secured channel Liam had set up. She typed quickly, "I have the file. Need to send it to Mason Cole." Then she attached a few documents from the folder and hit upload. For a moment, the progress bar moved smoothly. Then the cursor froze. Her stomach twisted. She tried again. Upload failed. The screen glitched, the cursor spinning endlessly. Then a message flashed in red. Remote access detected. Someone was inside her system. Evelyn yanked the Wi-Fi connection, heart pounding. But the laptop didn't shut down. The cursor moved on its own, opening her private folders, scanning them. She slammed the lid, unplugged it, and looked around the diner. No one seemed to notice. The only sound was the clinking of plates and soft country music playing overhead. Her hands shook as she whispered, "He found me." From the counter, a man in a leather jacket glanced her way, eyes lingering too long. Evelyn's instincts screamed. She shoved the laptop back into her bag, threw a few bills on the table, and slipped out the side door. Outside, rain poured harder. She spotted a trash bin, lifted the lid, and dropped the laptop inside. The plastic cracked. "No more tracking," she muttered. But she knew Marcus's reach extended far beyond one computer. 2 blocks away, she found a small electronics store still open. Inside, rows of used devices gleamed under flickering lights. She bought an old tablet and a cheap prepaid phone, paying in cash. At the counter, the clerk, a college kid, smiled. "Old school tech, huh?" "Just like the old days," she replied softly. Back at a cheap motel off Route 66, she powered on the tablet. It was slow, but it worked. Instead of connecting to the internet, she opened a simple text editor and began copying key data from memory: transaction codes, passwords, locations. To anyone else, it would look like nonsense, a random sequence of letters and numbers, but to her, it was survival. When she finished, she transferred the text to a USB drive and hid it inside a hollowed-out copy of the 48 Laws of Power she had bought years ago during deployment. She smiled bitterly at the irony. Suddenly, her prepaid phone buzzed. Unknown number. She froze, then answered. "Nice trick with the laptop," a man's voice drawled. "But we still have eyes on you, Captain." Her chest tightened. "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter," he said. "You have something that doesn't belong to you. Hand it over, and maybe you'll keep that pretty secret of yours about your father." She stared at the phone, heart hammering. They knew. Marcus had found out who she really was, the daughter of General Ford. That changed everything. She packed her things, ready to move again, when headlights swept across the window. A black SUV slowed outside the motel. Evelyn ducked. The vehicle idled for a moment, then drove off. She exhaled shakily, clutching her stomach. The world outside had turned silent, except for the rain and the distant hum of tires on asphalt. She opened the book where the USB was hidden and whispered, "They can watch me all they want, but they'll never read my mind." Then she turned off the light. In the darkness, the trap was already closing, and she was no longer the prey they thought she was. The next morning broke gray and still. Evelyn woke to the sound of the motel television humming softly, the screen flickering between static and a local news channel. She hadn't turned it on. For a moment she thought it was a dream, until she saw Marcus's face filling the screen. "Breaking news," the anchor said. "An internal investigation has cleared General Marcus Hale of all misconduct charges. However, a separate leak from within Fort Irwin has surfaced online, one showing the general in a compromising moment with another officer." Evelyn's eyes widened. The footage played, Marcus in his office, his hand resting intimately on Naomi Brooks's shoulder. Then a second clip, him kissing her. The timestamp placed it days before the public humiliation at the ceremony. Evelyn covered her mouth, disbelief mixing with satisfaction. "That's impossible," she whispered. Her prepaid phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown sender. "You're welcome. L. Liam." He had done it. The footage was out. Marcus's pristine reputation was cracking. But the relief didn't last. The news anchor continued. "A Authorities claim the footage was stolen from Fort Irwin's surveillance system. Officials are investigating the source of the leak. A chill ran through Evelyn's spine. If they traced the hack to Liam, he'd be finished. And if they thought she was involved, she'd never be free. She turned off the TV, grabbed her coat, and left the motel. Outside, the streets glistened from last night's rain. She walked toward a small diner down the block and sat by the window, trying to think. Two men in suits entered moments later, their movements too precise to be casual. They sat 2 booths away, ordered coffee, and spoke into their phones in clipped tones. Evelyn felt the hairs rise on her arms. She slid out of her booth and went to the restroom. Inside, she splashed cold water on her face, looked into the mirror, and whispered, "You've survived worse." When she stepped back out, the 2 men were gone, but a napkin sat on her table, folded neatly. Her name was written across it in blue ink. Inside was a small note. "Stop running. 8 p.m. tonight, Channel 72. That evening, she rented a new motel room under a false name and waited until 8. On the old TV set, the local public channel flickered to life. The screen was black for several seconds before static cleared, and suddenly, footage of Marcus appeared again. This time, it was a live broadcast. He sat behind his desk, visibly furious, giving an interview to a military journalist. "The woman you're defending," he said, voice cold, "was emotionally unstable. I acted to protect the integrity of the unit. These attacks are coordinated attempts to discredit the army." Evelyn clenched her fists. Lies, perfectly rehearsed. Then, without warning, the broadcast glitched. The screen flashed white, then cut to another feed, security footage from the ceremony itself. Marcus's voice echoed through the speakers. "You have dishonored this uniform." But this version showed everything. The moment Naomi handed him a folder just before he made the accusation. The angle was from above, clearly an internal surveillance feed. The interviewer shouted off camera, "What is this?" Marcus's face went pale. He slammed his fist on the table. "Cut the feed." The screen went dark. Evelyn sat frozen. Someone inside the system had hacked the live feed to expose him again. Her phone buzzed with a new message. "He's losing control. But be careful, he's angry now." Her breath caught. Marcus was a man who had built his career on power and fear. Losing control meant danger for anyone in his way. She looked out the window. A flash of headlights swept across the parking lot. A dark car idled near her door. Evelyn backed away from the window, hand instinctively on her belly. "Not tonight," she whispered. But deep down, she knew the war had entered a new phase. Marcus Hale had declared a silent hunt, and this time he wouldn't settle for humiliation. He wanted revenge. Night settled over Los Angeles like smoke, thick, heavy, and impossible to escape. Evelyn hadn't slept in 2 days. She sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the faint glow of the TV. Every channel replayed the chaos from the hacked broadcast. The general's face twisting in shock, the army scrambling to issue statements. The world smelled blood, but Marcus Hale was far from beaten. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a message from a restricted number. "We can help you. Meet us at Mercy Hills Clinic, 11 p.m. Bring the file." Evelyn's pulse quickened. Mercy Hills. She knew that name. It was the same private hospital network connected to Aegis Corp, the company Liam had accused of working with Marcus. Her first instinct screamed trap. But what if it wasn't? What if someone inside wanted to defect? She took a deep breath, checked the pistol Liam had left in the glove compartment, and drove through the empty streets. The city lights blurred into streaks of red and gold. Her reflection in the mirror looked nothing like the calm officer she once was, just a woman held together by adrenaline and sheer will. When she reached the clinic, the parking lot was nearly empty. A storm was brewing again, clouds swallowing the moon. Inside, the lobby smelled of disinfectant and silence. A receptionist looked up with a practiced smile. "Appointment name?" "Evelyn Carter," she said cautiously. The woman typed something, then nodded. "Room 12, down the hall." Evelyn walked slowly, her boots echoing against the tile. The air felt too still. As she neared room 12, she noticed a red light flicker above the door. A security camera recording. She stepped inside anyway. The room was dark, except for a single lamp illuminating a metal table. On it lay a thin manila folder and a white envelope. Evelyn frowned. "Hello?" No answer. She approached the table and opened the folder. Inside were photos, dozens of them, taken from surveillance drones. Each one showed her at different motels, gas stations, diners. She turned them over and saw timestamps matching every stop she had made since escaping Fort Irwin. Her throat tightened. They had been following her from the beginning. Then a voice behind her said, "You shouldn't have come alone." She spun around, gun raised. Marcus Hale stepped from the shadows, dressed in civilian clothes, his expression calm but eyes blazing. "You look tired," he said softly. "You should have stayed quiet." Evelyn's grip tightened on the pistol. "You tried to kill me, Marcus. You tried to erase me." "I was protecting the army," he said. "You were a liability, detects that, but you made this personal." He took a step closer. "That broadcast embarrassed me, Evelyn. Do you have any idea what I've lost because of you?" She steadied her aim. "Everything you built was a lie." His smile was cold. "You think you can expose me with that file? You don't even know what's inside. It's bait, sweetheart. Liam gave you exactly what I wanted him to." Her heart skipped. "You're lying." "Am I?" Marcus said, circling her. "Operation Mirror wasn't about selling data. It was a test, one to track internal leaks. You walked straight into it. The moment you opened that folder, your location went live." Evelyn's blood ran cold. Outside, headlights flashed through the blinds, 2 SUVs pulling into the lot. She could hear boots hitting the pavement. Marcus leaned close, his voice low. "You should have stayed my wife. Now you'll die as my mistake." Before he could move, Evelyn swung the pistol and fired a single shot at the ceiling sprinkler. Water exploded, raining down as alarms screamed. She bolted for the emergency exit, slipping on wet tile. Marcus shouted her name, but she didn't look back. Outside, she jumped into her car, engine roaring to life. In the mirror, she saw him watching her from the doorway, drenched but smiling. He raised a small device and pressed a button. The GPS on her dashboard blinked red. Signal locked. The hunter had become the hunted, and this time, escape wouldn't be enough. Rain hammered the windshield all the way across the Mojave. By the time Evelyn crossed into Washington, the world outside had turned into a blur of gray buildings and flashing lights. Every mile had felt like a war zone. Gas stations where faces lingered too long, highways where black SUVs appeared in the mirrors only to vanish again. She hadn't slept for 36 hours, but the file, her only leverage, was still hidden inside her. The 48 laws of power wedged beneath the passenger seat. At dawn, she parked near the Potomac River and changed into a clean uniform she'd packed weeks earlier. The mirror reflected a different woman now. Eyes sharp, shoulders straight, no trace of the quiet doctor who once fixed broken minds. Today, she would confront the machine that had chewed her life apart. Her destination was the Department of Defense headquarters, a fortress of marble and steel that guarded the secrets of the entire nation. Inside, security scanners hummed. Evelyn handed over her old ID, half expecting alarms. The guard scanned it, paused, then handed it back. "You're clear, Captain Carter. Welcome back." Someone had reset her clearance. As she walked down the long corridor lined with portraits of past generals, she spotted Colonel Liam Ward waiting near the end. His face looked older, his beard rougher. He smiled faintly. "You made it." "I thought you were dead," she said. "Close enough," he replied. "They hit my car outside Denver, but they missed the part of me that still owes your father a favor." They entered a secure conference room where a young military attorney waited, a man in his early 30s with clean-cut features and calm blue eyes. "Mason Cole," he introduced himself. "General Ford sent me. Let's make this official." He placed a sleek iPad on the table. Evelyn laid down the book and slid out the hidden USB. "This is everything. Operation Mirror, Aegis Corp transfers communications from General Hale. If this disappears, I disappear with it." Mason met her eyes. "It won't disappear. I work directly under internal oversight." As he inserted the drive, the room lights dimmed and a large screen came alive, displaying classified documents, digital signatures, and voice memos. One audio clip played automatically, Marcus's voice saying, "The data must stay internal. If Carter talks, remove her quietly." The room fell silent. Liam crossed his arms. "That's your evidence, enough to bury him and half his friends." But Mason didn't look relieved. He frowned, scrolling through the files. "Something's wrong. The encryption pattern's reversed. This isn't the original Operation Mirror. It's a mirrored copy." Evelyn leaned in. "Meaning what?" Meaning whoever gave you this wanted to trace whoever tried to open it. It's not just evidence, it's a beacon. Liam swore under his breath. He's still tracking her. Mason unplugged the drive immediately. We need to isolate this system. If Marcus still has access, he'll know you're here. Evelyn's pulse thudded in her ears. So we just sit and wait for him to show up? No, Mason said. We do what your father would have done, make him think he already won. He pulled up an empty document, typing rapidly. I'll draft a memo to Internal Affairs announcing a full investigation into you. It'll look like they've captured their leak. Marcus will relax just long enough for us to trace his next move. Evelyn stared at him, torn between trust and exhaustion. And if this fails? Mason looked up. Then you run again. But next time, you'll run with an army behind you. Liam's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and paled. They know. Hale's people just entered the building. The hallway lights dimmed to red. Security lockdown. A voice over the intercom called, "All personnel remain in your offices." Evelyn grabbed the drive, slipping it back into the book. We can't let them take this. Mason opened the side door leading to an emergency stairwell. Then we move now. As alarms blared, the three of them sprinted down the narrow stairs, shadows flickering along the walls. Outside, rain crashed against the windows. Evelyn clutched her belly, whispering a silent promise to the child inside her. If they wanted a ghost, she would become one. But this time, she'd haunt every lie they built. The sky above Washington cracked open in a sheet of lightning as Evelyn, Liam, and Mason burst out of the emergency exit. The rain fell in silver streaks, heavy and merciless, soaking their uniforms instantly. Mason led them toward a black sedan waiting near the curb. "Get in," he shouted over the thunder. They drove in tense silence through the chaotic streets until the Capitol dome disappeared behind them. When they finally crossed the bridge into Virginia, Liam exhaled shakily. "They won't stop now," he said. "Hale's men will hunt us until that file is destroyed." Evelyn looked out the window, her reflection blurred by raindrops. "Then we don't let them destroy it. We take it somewhere even he can't reach." "Where's that?" Mason asked. She hesitated. "New York." Liam frowned. "That's the most surveilled city in the country." "Exactly," Evelyn said quietly. Too many eyes for him to move quietly. "And I have someone there who can help." By dawn, the rain had turned to mist as they entered Manhattan. Traffic glimmered on slick asphalt, yellow cabs splashing through puddles. Evelyn's pulse quickened as the city rose around them, steel, glass, and noise. It smelled like life, like something that refused to die. Mason dropped her off in front of a quiet apartment building overlooking Fifth Avenue. "Stay inside," he told her. "I'll keep them busy." Liam pressed a folded piece of paper into her hand. "A secure number. Call only if you have to." When the elevator doors closed behind her, Evelyn finally felt the exhaustion of weeks without rest. Inside the apartment, small but warm, she stripped off her soaked coat and made tea. For a moment, there was peace. The sound of the city outside was almost comforting. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She froze, debating whether to answer. Finally, she pressed the green button. "Evelyn," said a voice she hadn't heard in years. Deep, steady, commanding. "Dad." General Alexander Ford rarely used his personal line, especially not now. "I know what's happening," he said, "and I know what you're carrying." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears she didn't have time for. "You knew about Operation Mirror?" "I created its prototype 20 years ago," Ford admitted. "It was supposed to protect soldiers from psychological manipulation, not turn into a weapon for profit." He sighed, the sound heavy with regret. "Marcus Hale corrupted it. I warned him once, and now he's gone too far." Evelyn's voice trembled. "They tried to kill me. They almost—" "I know," he interrupted softly, "and I'm sorry I couldn't stop it sooner. But you can't trust anyone in D.C. right now. The only safe path is to make the truth public." "I can't," she said. "If I expose everything, they'll come after you." There was a pause on the line. "You think I care about my reputation? You're my daughter. That's all that matters." Evelyn bit her lip, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I don't want to drag you into this." "You already have," he said gently. "But that's all right. You were always stronger than you knew." Outside, a siren wailed somewhere down the avenue. Ford's tone shifted. "Listen carefully. There's a gala next week at the Plaza Hotel. Every senior officer, every politician with ties to Aegis Corp will be there. I'll make sure you're invited. That's where you end this. End it how? She asked. By reminding them who you are. The line clicked off before she could reply. Evelyn stared at the phone, her heartbeat slowing into something steady, resolute. She walked to the window, looking out at Fifth Avenue below. People hurried under umbrellas, lights from Tiffany & Co. and Cartier reflecting off the wet pavement. Somewhere down there power was being traded like currency. But soon, the truth would cut through it all. Her reflection in the glass stared back. No longer frightened, only focused. She picked up her notebook and wrote a single line. The Plaza. Final reckoning. For the first time since the humiliation, she smiled. Not because she felt safe, but because she finally knew where the war would end. The following week, winter sunlight spilled across Washington like dull glass. Evelyn arrived at the Pentagon's Internal Oversight Chamber, wearing a simple black suit, her hair tied back in a clean knot. She looked every bit the disciplined officer the Army once celebrated. Except her eyes no longer carried hope. They carried intent. The hearing room was built for intimidation. High ceilings, cold light, and a semicircle of officers behind mahogany desks. Reporters waited beyond the glass partition, murmuring as Marcus Hale took his seat opposite her. His medals still gleamed, his posture still perfect, but the shadows under his eyes told a truer story. Naomi Brooks sat beside him, legal pad in hand, whispering like a serpent. At the center table, Mason Cole placed a neat stack of documents. Captain Evelyn Carter will now address the board, he announced. Evelyn stood. Her pulse thundered, but her voice was calm. A month ago, I was accused of dishonor and misconduct, she began. But the dishonor didn't belong to me. It belonged to a system that rewards silence. Marcus's jaw flexed. Spare us the theatrics, he muttered. Evelyn ignored him. Operation Mirror was created to study soldier trauma. Instead, General Hale used it to sell classified data to private corporations. When I discovered inconsistencies in the transfer logs, he decided the solution was simple. Erase the witness. She lifted her gaze toward the board. Erase me. The colonel leading the panel frowned. Do you have proof of this accusation? Mason opened a folder. Yes, sir. Transaction codes linked to Aegis Corp and testimony from Colonel Liam Ward. The colonel adjusted his glasses. Where is Colonel Ward? Evelyn hesitated. Missing. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Naomi smirked. Convenient. Mason continued. We've also recovered encrypted audio of General Hale instructing subordinates to remove Captain Carter from record. The encryption was verified by the Office of Cybersecurity. He played the clip. Marcus's voice filled the room. If Carter opens her mouth, bury her career. Make it look clean. A hush fell. Cameras clicked. Marcus shot to his feet. That audio is doctored. She's manipulating this board with edited material. The colonel raised a hand. General Hale, you'll have your turn. Marcus glared at Evelyn. You think this ends with a hearing? You think the Pentagon bends for a disgraced wife? Evelyn met his stare. No, but truth does not require permission. The colonel nodded. We'll review the evidence in private. Until then, both parties are under restricted travel orders. The gavel struck once. The hearing adjourned. Outside the chamber, chaos exploded. Reporters shouting, flashes blinding. Evelyn walked through the crowd, Mason close behind. You did well, he said. But Hale's not done. He's already working his contacts in the press. I know, she replied. He'll twist the story before nightfall. Mason glanced at her. Then we release something he can't twist. He handed her a tablet. A live interview. Tonight, prime time. The network already agreed if you're willing. Evelyn hesitated. They'll crucify me on air. Maybe, Mason said. Or maybe you'll make them listen. Hours later, in a quiet studio across the Potomac, Evelyn sat beneath hot lights, microphone clipped to her jacket. The interviewer leaned forward. Captain Carter, are you claiming the Army covered up crimes for General Hale? Evelyn inhaled slowly. I'm not claiming it, she said. I'm proving it. Behind her, the screen lit up with newly leaked photos, documents signed by Marcus, Naomi's transfer requests, and digital receipts linking Aegis Corp to unregistered payments. Viewers across the country watched as the story unraveled live. Hashtags spread like wildfire. Inside his office, Marcus hurled his phone at the wall. Naomi paled beside him. She's destroying us, Naomi whispered. Marcus turned toward the window, fists shaking. Then we destroy her first. Thunder rumbled outside, echoing through the night like artillery fire. Tomorrow, The war for truth would spill beyond the courtroom, onto every screen in America. The morning after the live interview, the world woke up different. The internet had detonated overnight. Every major outlet, CNN, Reuters, The Washington Post, ran the same headline: General Hale accused of selling military data to private defense firm. The leak had gone global. Screens across airports, coffee shops, and military bases repeated Evelyn's words: "Truth does not require permission." But fame came with danger. By 8 a.m., her apartment on Fifth Avenue was surrounded by reporters. Cameras flashed non-stop. Protesters shouted below, holding signs that read "Justice for Captain Carter." Evelyn watched from behind the curtain, her hands shaking. This wasn't victory, it was exposure. She was a moving target, glowing under the world's brightest light. Mason called from a secure line. "You've got less than an hour before Internal Affairs shows up. They're sending escorts to protect you, but it's Hale's men." She grabbed the book hiding the drive, stuffed it into her messenger bag, and moved fast. "Where do I go?" "There's a car waiting 2 blocks north. Driver's name is Wren. He works for General Ford. He'll take you to Andrews Air Force Base." "Why Andrews?" "Because your father just declared the investigation federal. He's taken command." The line clicked. Evelyn pulled on a black coat and sunglasses, stepped into the hallway, and slipped down the service stairs. By the time she reached the street, a light snow had begun to fall, muffling the city noise. She kept her head down, weaving through crowds, her heart hammering. When she reached the corner, a black sedan idled with its engine running. The driver, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, opened the door. "Captain Carter?" Evelyn nodded and climbed in. The car accelerated into the traffic stream. On the radio, a news anchor's voice filled the silence. Sources claim an anonymous whistleblower provided the data that exposed Aegis Corp's illegal contracts. The Department of Defense has yet to issue a full statement. The driver glanced in the mirror. "You just shook the entire country." Evelyn exhaled. "Not yet. Hale still has friends in power." As they neared the bridge, headlights flashed behind them. 3 SUVs in tight formation. Evelyn's gut twisted. "We're being followed." The driver accelerated. "Hold on." The chase tore through the streets, horns blaring. The first SUV swerved, trying to block them. Wren pulled sharply onto a side street, tires screeching. Snow sprayed in all directions. Evelyn clutched the seat, her stomach flipping. "Who are they?" she shouted. "Not military. Private security. Aegis Corp." Bullets shattered the rear window. Evelyn ducked. Wren veered hard left into an alley and slammed the brakes. "Out!" she yelled. "Run!" They bolted through a narrow passage as the SUVs skidded to a stop behind them. Men jumped out, armed, shouting orders. Evelyn sprinted toward the end of the alley where a tall chain-link fence loomed. She climbed, ignoring the pain slicing through her hands. Wren covered her with a handgun, firing 2 quick shots. The attackers ducked. Evelyn rolled over the top and dropped into the snow on the other side. "Keep moving," Wren shouted. Evelyn ran until her lungs burned. Sirens wailed in the distance. Finally, a helicopter spotlight swept the sky above, a military chopper bearing the insignia of the United States Air Force. It circled once, then hovered. Wren's voice crackled through a handheld radio. "Your ride's here." Moments later, a rope ladder dropped from the chopper. Evelyn grabbed it and climbed, snow whipping around her face. Below, the attackers scattered as soldiers in black uniforms repelled from the aircraft, subduing them. When she reached the cabin, a soldier offered his hand. "Captain Carter, General Ford's expecting you." Evelyn sank into the seat, breathless. The city glittered beneath them, both beautiful and corrupt. Her father's voice came through the radio. "You're safe now, Evelyn. But the world isn't. This goes higher than Hale." She looked down at the lights fading below, the magnitude of what she'd started settling on her chest. For the first time, Evelyn realized she hadn't just exposed a man, she'd cracked open an empire built on silence. The helicopter touched down at Andrews Air Force Base just after sunrise. Frost coated the runway, and soldiers in heavy jackets moved briskly, their boots striking the tarmac in perfect rhythm. Evelyn stepped out into the cold, the wind snapping her coat against her legs. A line of armored vehicles stood waiting near a hangar. Beside them, her father, General Alexander Ford, waited, hands clasped behind his back, expression unreadable. He didn't speak until she reached him. "You look exhausted," he said quietly. "I've been worse," she replied. Ford nodded toward the hangar. Come inside, there's something you need to see. Inside, Mason was already there, bent over a table covered with maps and screens. He looked up as they entered. We traced the data trail, he said. Operation Mirror goes beyond Hale. There are 7 generals and 2 senators tied to Aegis Corp. They've been using the project to manipulate defense contracts and stock prices. Evelyn's heart sank. This isn't just corruption, it's treason. Ford's jaw tightened. And Hale is still out there, spinning his own version of the story. Last night, his PR team released a statement claiming the leak was part of a foreign operation led by you. Evelyn stiffened. He's turning me into the enemy. Mason slid a printed headline across the table. Disgraced officer behind military cyber attack. Her face stared back from the page, shadowed and severe. Ford placed a hand on her shoulder. They're building a narrative. They'll try to indict you before we can indict them. She took a shaky breath. Then we hit first. Mason met her gaze. I've been thinking the same thing. The press loves a story that bleeds, but they also love a hero. If we can prove Hale's personal involvement before the committee, we can flip the story overnight. How? Evelyn asked. He turned his tablet toward her. On screen was a live video feed of Naomi Brooks being escorted into a federal holding cell. Her once sleek hair hung loose, makeup smeared. Naomi's been arrested, Mason said. She's willing to talk for immunity. Ford frowned. She's a viper. Don't trust her. Evelyn studied the screen. Naomi's eyes darted nervously as she spoke to the guard. For the first time, she looked small. She's scared, Evelyn murmured. Fear makes people honest. Later that day, they met in an interrogation room, lit by a single bulb. Naomi sat handcuffed at the table, twisting a tissue between her fingers. When she saw Evelyn, her lips parted. You look good for a dead woman. Evelyn didn't respond. Mason set a recorder on the table. Captain Brooks, you requested to make a statement. Naomi's eyes flicked toward him, then back to Evelyn. You think I enjoyed any of this? Hale used everyone. He made me believe he'd protect me. Evelyn's tone was flat. You helped him destroy lives. Naomi swallowed hard. I didn't know what he planned for you, Evelyn. I swear, when he ordered that hospital accident, I begged him to stop. The air went still. Ford's hand clenched into a fist. Evelyn leaned forward. Then help me stop him now. Give us proof. Naomi nodded weakly. There's a backup server, underground storage in Arlington. All the communications are mirrored there, including Hale's calls with the senators. Access code 47 Delta. But he's moving it tonight. After that, it's gone. Mason stood abruptly. We'll move before sunset. As guards led Naomi out, she whispered, He'll come for you before you get there. Evelyn watched her go, then turned to her father. We can end this tonight. Ford's eyes hardened. Then we end it. Outside, snow began to fall again, thin flakes melting on the warm runway lights. Mason checked his watch. We'll take 2 teams, one for the data, one for extraction. Evelyn tightened her gloves. He wanted a war in the dark, she said quietly. Let's give him one. By nightfall, the truth would have a body count, and only one name would still matter. Hale. The night swallowed Arlington in a haze of snow and sirens. The underground data facility sat beneath an abandoned logistics building, disguised by faded military emblems and locked steel doors. Evelyn's convoy rolled in silently. 2 black SUVs, headlights dimmed, their tires crunching against ice. Mason sat up front, headset pressed to his ear. We have 5 minutes before Hale's men arrive. Move fast. Evelyn adjusted her bulletproof vest, every movement careful. She felt the weight of the unborn child under her ribs, a reminder of what was at stake. Liam, alive after all, scarred but steady, opened the rear door. You ready for this? She met his eyes. I stopped being ready a long time ago. Inside, the corridors glowed with emergency lights. Dust hung in the air, stirred by boots and breath. They descended a narrow stairwell, weapons drawn. At the bottom, a reinforced vault waited, a door sealed with digital locks. Mason knelt beside the console, fingers flying over the keypad. Code 47 Delta confirmed. The lock beeped, hissed, and disengaged. The door slid open to reveal rows of humming servers stretching into darkness. Green lights blinked like heartbeats. Evelyn stepped forward, awe and dread mixing in her chest. This is it. Mason nodded. Every message, every file, every payoff, the truth lives here. Liam handed her a portable drive. Copy everything. Don't miss a byte. Evelyn connected the drive and watched as numbers flickered across the screen. 2%, 9%, 27%. Her reflection in the glass looked ghostly, unreal. For a moment she thought about the life she had before, all the soldiers she helped, the peace she believed in. Then the alarm went off. A piercing wail filled the tunnel. Red lights flashed. Tripwire. Mason shouted. "They're here!" Gunfire erupted from the corridor above. Concrete chipped. Sparks flew. Evelyn grabbed the drive, 64% complete. Liam returned fire, his voice echoing. "Go." "I'll hold them." "No," Evelyn screamed, but he was already moving toward the stairwell, covering the entrance with precise bursts. Mason grabbed her arm. "We have to go." He knew what this meant. The download reached 100%. Evelyn yanked the drive free, heart pounding. She could still hear Liam shouting orders before the next explosion shook the ground. Smoke rolled through the tunnel. They sprinted toward the emergency exit. Behind them, the servers began to overload. Marcus's fail-safe, erasing everything. By the time they burst into the cold night, the building's upper floor was already in flames. Sirens wailed in the distance. Mason slammed the drive into a laptop, verifying the copy. "It worked," he gasped. "We've got it all." Evelyn's voice cracked. "Liam?" Mason looked back at the inferno. "He didn't make it." Tears stung her eyes, freezing before they could fall. "Then we make this worth it." They raced toward the courthouse in downtown D.C., where General Ford had convened an emergency military tribunal. Inside the grand chamber, cameras flashed as Hale was escorted in handcuffs, his uniform immaculate but his eyes burning with fury. When Evelyn entered, the room fell silent. The colonel presiding over the hearing motioned for her to speak. She stepped forward, holding up the drive. "This contains encrypted evidence linking General Marcus Hale to Aegis Corp's illegal operations, as well as orders for multiple cover-ups, including attempted murder." The colonel nodded to Mason. He connected the drive to the central display. Emails, transactions, video clips, everything lit up on the giant screen. The room gasped as Hale's voice echoed again. "If Carter talks, make it look clean." Reporters scribbled frantically. The colonel turned to Hale. "Do you deny these charges?" Hale glared at Evelyn. "You think you've won? You've destroyed the Army's image. You're no hero, just a traitor in uniform." Evelyn's reply was calm, razor-sharp. "No, General. I'm the soldier who refused to follow a corrupt order." Hale lunged, shouting, before guards restrained him. Cameras captured every second. The colonel's gavel struck once. "General Marcus Hale, you are hereby relieved of duty and placed under arrest for high treason." The room erupted. Reporters surged forward. Evelyn turned away, her father waiting at the door. Ford's voice trembled with pride. "It's over, Evie." She looked back at the burning anger in Hale's eyes and whispered, "No, it's justice." But deep inside, she knew. Justice always came with a price, and the night was far from finished. Snow drifted down over Washington like ash the morning after the tribunal. The city moved in slow motion, stunned by what it had witnessed the night before. General Marcus Hale, arrested for treason. The headline dominated every screen. Evelyn's name appeared beside it, hailed as the whistleblower who saved the army, but even victory carried ghosts. She stood on the steps of the courthouse wrapped in her father's coat, exhaustion etched into her face. Mason joined her, coffee in hand. "You should rest," he said softly. "It's over." Evelyn shook her head. "Not until she's gone." He didn't need to ask who. Naomi Brooks, Hale's mistress, strategist, and accomplice, had vanished after the tribunal. The military police searched every base, every safe house, nothing. That night, Evelyn checked into a secure hotel under a false name. The drive with the original files rested inside a vault at the Pentagon, locked by her father's order. But she couldn't sleep. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Liam's face disappearing into smoke. At midnight, her burner phone buzzed with a single message. "She's in Los Angeles. Beverly Grand Hotel, room 904. The sender was unlisted. She didn't hesitate. By noon, Evelyn was on a flight west. The city shimmered beneath a blue California sky, as if nothing bad ever happened there. She rented a car, drove straight to Beverly Hills, and parked across from the glass tower of the Beverly Grand. Through the window of the hotel cafe, she spotted Naomi. Sunglasses on, blonde hair perfectly curled, flipping through a magazine. Evelyn waited until the woman was alone, then walked inside. Their eyes met across the room. Naomi's smile faltered. "You look alive," she said coolly. "Disappointed?" Evelyn asked. Naomi sighed, setting her glass down. "You got what you wanted. Marcus is finished. So why are you here? Evelyn leaned forward. Because men like him don't act alone, and women like you don't run without money. Naomi laughed softly. You think you're the hero in this story? You're just a headline. In a month, the world will forget your name. Evelyn placed a small envelope on the table. Inside was a photo, Naomi and Marcus at the hospital where the assassination attempt had been staged. I found this in the backup server. You were there that night. Naomi's hand twitched. You can't prove. The timestamp proves enough, Evelyn interrupted. You supplied the sedatives, you injected soldiers with experimental compounds from Aegis Corp's lab. You weren't cleaning his mess, Naomi. You were the mess. Naomi's face drained of color. Evelyn stood, her voice low but steady. I came here to give you a choice. Turn yourself in, or I release everything, including the footage of you deleting the hospital logs. Naomi's nails dug into her palm. You wouldn't dare. Evelyn met her gaze. Try me. They stared at each other for a long moment, two women carved from the same war, one clinging to power, the other to truth. Finally, Naomi's composure cracked. You don't understand, she whispered. Hale wasn't the only one. Aegis Corp answers to people far above him. If I talk, they'll kill me. Evelyn's voice softened. Then start running now. Naomi blinked. What? I already sent the files to military intelligence. They'll find you in less than an hour. If you want to disappear, this is your only window. Naomi's lips parted in disbelief. Why warn me? Because I'm not you, Evelyn said. I don't need revenge to live. Evelyn turned and walked out, snow beginning to fall again, even under the California sun. An hour later, police sirens echoed down Wilshire Boulevard. News reports claimed Naomi Brooks was arrested trying to flee with $500,000 in unmarked cash. That evening, Evelyn stood on her hotel balcony watching the sunset bleed into gold. Mason called from D.C. They've got her. She's talking. Evelyn closed her eyes. Then it's almost over. Mason's voice softened. Almost. Because somewhere in the silence between justice and peace, the ghosts of the fallen still whispered. And Evelyn wasn't sure if she'd ever stop hearing them. The trial was over, the headlines had moved on, and Washington's winter finally broke into soft gray rain. Evelyn found herself standing in a white corridor that smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee. The hospital was quiet, too quiet for a woman who had lived months inside the roar of chaos. She pressed a hand against her swollen belly and took a slow breath. The doctor had said stress could still trigger complications, but peace, it seemed, was harder to find than evidence. Her father waited by the door of her private room, his uniform crisp, his eyes tired. You shouldn't be here alone, he murmured. Evelyn smiled faintly. I've been alone for months. I'll survive one more hour. He hesitated, then stepped closer. Evelyn, there's something I need to tell you. The Pentagon wants to issue a statement clearing your record. You'll be reinstated with full honors. She looked out the window. Beyond the hospital grounds, the Potomac shimmered under low clouds. That uniform doesn't fit who I am anymore, she said softly. I'm not sure it ever did. Her father's hand tightened on the doorframe. You did what most officers couldn't. You faced the machine and lived. That deserves more than silence. Evelyn turned to him, eyes shining. I didn't survive to wear medals, Dad. I survived to raise a child who doesn't have to. He studied her for a long moment before nodding. Then maybe you finally understand what real command looks like. They stood in silence, 2 generations bound by duty but separated by different wars. When Ford finally left, the room felt heavier, though calmer. Evelyn sat by the window and watched raindrops race each other down the glass. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. The heart monitor hummed softly beside her. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to close her eyes. Dreams came like waves. Liam's voice calling through smoke, Mason's calm eyes in the courtroom, her mother's laugh echoing from a time she barely remembered. When she woke, the pain hit sharp and real. Her water had broken. Alarms went off. Nurses rushed in. Stay calm, Captain Carter, one said quickly. We're moving you to delivery. The world blurred in white lights and movement. She clutched the bed rails, breathing through contractions as doctors shouted instructions. Somewhere in the haze, she heard her father's voice outside the room, firm but trembling. Do whatever it takes. That's my daughter in there. Hours stretched into eternity. Evelyn screamed once, then again, until everything went quiet. A single cry broke the silence, a thin, fierce wail that filled the room like sunlight. The nurse smiled through tears. "It's a boy." They placed the small bundle in her arms. Evelyn looked down, disbelief melting into awe. The child's eyes blinked open, blue like hers, steady like his grandfather's. "Hey, little soldier," she whispered, voice cracking. Outside the window, dawn broke, the rain giving way to pale light. Mason entered quietly, a bouquet of white lilies in hand. "You did it," he said softly. She smiled weakly. "We did it." He stood beside her, watching the newborn's tiny hand curl around her finger. "The world already knows your story," he said. "But this part, this is yours alone." Evelyn's gaze lingered on the sleeping child. "He'll never know the names of the men who tried to break me," she murmured. "Only the ones who helped me stand." Her father appeared at the doorway, metals glinting faintly under the morning light. He saluted her, not as a general to an officer, but as a father to a daughter who had fought her own war and won. Evelyn's heart swelled with quiet pride. For the first time in forever, she didn't feel hunted or haunted, just whole. Outside, the world moved on, but inside that quiet hospital room, a new life began, and with it, the first breath of peace Evelyn Carter had ever known. A year later, winter returned to New York, but this time, the snow felt gentler. The city glittered beneath 1,000 lights as black cars lined the circular drive of the Plaza Hotel. Inside, the grand ballroom shimmered with gold chandeliers, polished marble, and the sound of champagne glasses clinking against hope. It was the annual Military Honors Gala, an event meant to celebrate courage, integrity, and sacrifice. Irony hung thick in the air, because tonight's guest of honor was a woman who once stood accused of betrayal, Dr. Evelyn Carter. She stood before the mirror in her suite upstairs, fastening the final clasp on a white gown that flowed like silk rain. The reflection staring back was no longer the soldier who had been broken and shamed. This woman carried stillness, not fear. Power, not anger. Her father adjusted his tie behind her. "Are you ready?" Evelyn met his eyes in the mirror. "I've been ready since the day they tried to take my name." General Ford smiled, pride softening his usually hard features. "You've turned their weapon into your armor." A knock interrupted them. Mason stepped inside, his tuxedo crisp, his voice low. "It's time." Together, the three walked down the grand staircase, flashbulbs erupting like fireworks. Reporters called out questions, microphones thrust forward. "Dr. Carter, how does it feel to return a hero? Do you forgive General Hale?" "What's next for the woman who took down Aegis Corp?" Evelyn answered none of them. Her silence was its own headline. At the podium, a senator delivered the introduction. 1 year ago, Dr. Evelyn Carter risked her life to expose a web of corruption that reached the highest levels of our defense system. Tonight, we honor her with the Medal of Distinguished Service, the same medal once denied to her. Applause thundered through the hall as Evelyn stepped forward. Cameras flashed, catching the glint of her medal as it finally found its rightful place on her chest. She looked out across the crowd. Hundreds of faces, some proud, some guilty. "I once believed honor was given," she began, voice steady through the microphone. "I've learned it's something you earn every time you choose truth over silence." The crowd fell silent. Even the clinking glasses stopped. "I don't stand here tonight to celebrate a victory," she continued. "I stand here to remember the cost of it. Friends who didn't survive, faith that had to be rebuilt, and a country that must never confuse power with purpose." In the back of the room, Mason watched her with quiet admiration. Ord stood beside him, eyes glistening. As Evelyn stepped down from the stage, a journalist called out, "Dr. Carter, do you have anything to say to your former husband?" She paused. The question cut through the applause like a blade. Slowly, she turned to face the cameras. "Yes," she said softly. "Tell him I finally learned how to salute." The crowd erupted, half in laughter, half in awe. Later that evening, as the orchestra played a slow tune, Evelyn stepped onto the balcony overlooking Central Park. Snow drifted down through the city's golden glow. Mason joined her, handing her a glass of champagne. "You handled that like a general," he said. She smiled faintly. "Maybe I learned from the best." He studied her for a moment, then asked, "So what now? You've won the war. What comes after victory?" Evelyn looked out over the city that had once seemed too large to face. "Healing," she said, "and maybe something worth building, not fighting." Mason's gaze softened. You know, that sounds like a future I'd like to be part of. She didn't answer, just met his eyes and let the quiet between them speak louder than words. Far below, a banner fluttered in the wind, honor restored. For the first time in years, Evelyn Carter wasn't defined by survival. She was defined by grace. And tonight, the world finally stood to salute her for it. Winter broke slowly over the capital, like an old wound learning how to heal. A month had passed since the gala at the plaza, but its echoes still filled every newsroom and corner of the internet. Evelyn Carter's speech had gone viral, shared millions of times. To the public, she was a symbol of moral courage. To the military, she was a reckoning they could never silence again. But not everyone was celebrating. In a federal prison an hour outside D.C., Marcus Hale sat alone in a gray cell, stripped of his stars, his medals, and the arrogance that once defined him. The concrete walls were bare except for a small window that offered nothing but sky. Every day he watched the sun rise and fade without sound. Every night he replayed the same scene, the woman he'd tried to destroy standing above him, calm, victorious, untouchable. One morning a guard approached his cell door. "You got mail," he said flatly, sliding an envelope through the slot. Marcus frowned. He hadn't received a letter in months. The envelope was plain, stamped with no return address. He hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single photograph, a baby, wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Beneath it, a handwritten note. "He'll know his father's name, but not your lies." His breath caught. His hands trembled. The photo slipped from his fingers onto the cold floor. For the first time since his arrest, Marcus's composure cracked. He sank onto the cot, head in his hands. Regret, foreign, heavy, relentless, settled over him. He had traded love for control, truth for ambition. Now he had neither. Far away, in a sunlit townhouse overlooking the Potomac, Evelyn sat by the window with her son asleep in her arms. She watched the river move gently beneath the bridge, remembering the years when every sound outside made her flinch. Those days were gone. The world had gone quiet in the right ways. Her father entered, holding a folder. "The official verdict came through this morning," he said. "Naomi Brooks, 20 years. Hale, 35, no parole." Evelyn didn't look up. "Justice," she murmured. "But it never feels like enough, does it?" Ford sighed. "Justice isn't about satisfaction. It's about balance. You restored that." She finally met his eyes. "I didn't restore anything. I just stopped them from breaking more people." Her father smiled faintly. "That's how restoration begins." Mason arrived later that afternoon, dressed casually for once, sleeves rolled up, the stress lines around his eyes softer than before. "I just came from headquarters," he said, setting a folder on the table. "The Pentagon's launching a reform initiative, new oversight protocols, civilian ethics training. They're naming it after you." Evelyn blinked. "After me?" "It's called the Carter Protocol," Mason said with a grin. "A reminder that loyalty doesn't mean obedience." She shook her head, half laughing. "That sounds like trouble." "It sounds like progress," he replied. They walked together outside, the baby bundled between them. The air smelled of wet earth and thawing snow. Families strolled along the river, unaware that the woman passing beside them had once stood on the edge of ruin. Mason stopped and looked at her. "You ever think about going back to the army?" She smiled faintly. "No, I think about building something that doesn't need soldiers." He nodded. "Then maybe you've already won." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Evelyn stood on her balcony, the child asleep again in her arms. She looked toward the city skyline, glowing gold against the night. Somewhere behind concrete walls, Marcus Hale stared at the same sunset through narrow glass. Their worlds no longer touched, yet they shared the same sky, a quiet testimony to choices and consequences. In the end, Evelyn didn't destroy him. Life did. And that was the truest justice of all. Spring arrived quietly, softening the gray edges of Washington. Cherry blossoms lined the streets, and the air smelled of new beginnings. The year had passed since the trial, yet Evelyn Carter's name still carried weight, not just as a survivor, but as a reformer. She had turned her scars into blueprints for change. Inside a converted brick building near Georgetown, a new sign was being installed over the door. The Phoenix Foundation. Below it read the words, "For Women Who Serve." Evelyn stood on the sidewalk watching workers bolt the final letters in place. Her son, now toddling beside her, clapped his small hands, unaware of the history beneath their feet. Mason approached carrying 2 coffees. "You really did it," he said, handing her one. "The Carter Protocol changed policy, but this place, it's going to change lives." Evelyn smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "This isn't just mine. It's for every woman who wore the uniform and left it with more wounds than medals." They walked inside. The interior smelled of fresh paint and purpose. Soft beige walls, framed photographs of servicewomen, shelves filled with donated books. A quiet hum of computers and the faint melody of a radio filled the space. Evelyn ran her fingers along the edge of a desk. "I wanted it to feel safe, not like another institution." Mason nodded. "Your first group arrives next week. 6 veterans from the trauma program. The media wants to cover it." "I'm done being a headline," Evelyn said. "Let them see the work, not me." He grinned. "Good luck with that. You've become a symbol whether you like it or not." She rolled her eyes but smiled. Symbols fade, stories last. That afternoon, she met with the Foundation's staff, a small team of doctors, counselors, and volunteers. They gathered in the main hall, sunlight pouring through the tall windows. Evelyn addressed them with quiet conviction. "This foundation isn't about charity, it's about restoration. We're not rebuilding broken soldiers. We're reminding them they were never broken to begin with." Applause rippled through the room. Later, as the sun dipped behind the Potomac, Evelyn walked out to the garden behind the building. The cherry trees swayed gently, petals drifting like pink snow. Mason joined her, his hands in his pockets. "You know," he said, "I looked up the myth of the phoenix. It burns, dies, and rises again stronger than before. That sound familiar?" She smiled faintly. "It's a beautiful idea, rebirth from ashes, but it only works if you stop clinging to the fire." He watched her for a long moment. "So, what's next for you?" Evelyn glanced toward the city skyline glowing in the distance. "I don't know. For the first time, I don't need to." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from the Department of Defense. Funding approved for expansion, the Phoenix Project to launch nationwide. She exhaled, overwhelmed. Mason leaned closer, reading the screen. "Looks like you just started a revolution." Evelyn laughed softly. "No, I just gave the right people a place to begin again." They stood there in the fading light, the air thick with peace and possibility. A soft wind carried the scent of blossoms across the courtyard. Mason reached out, brushing his thumb gently against her wrist. "You ever think about us?" she interrupted, smiling. He nodded. She looked at him for a long moment. "I think healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means making room for something new." He smiled. "Then maybe that's enough for now." As they walked back inside, the lights of the Phoenix Foundation glowed against the evening. Behind them, the sign shimmered like fire reborn, its reflection flickering in the glass doors. Evelyn had risen, not as a soldier, not as a victim, but as something rarer, proof that from ruin can come not just survival, but light, strong enough to guide others home. 3 years later, the morning sun rose over Arlington, with a golden calm that felt almost unreal. The storms, the trials, the headlines, all of it had faded into history. The Phoenix Foundation had expanded to 6 cities, its emblem now recognized nationwide. Evelyn Carter had traded uniforms for white coats and conference stages, though she still preferred the quiet moments, the ones far from applause. That morning, she stood outside the National Military Academy, holding her son's small hand. The boy, now 3, wore a tiny jacket embroidered with a silver phoenix. His blue eyes, wide with curiosity, scanned the flags rippling above the entrance. "Is this where you worked, Mommy?" he asked. Evelyn smiled. "Sort of. This is where people learn what honor really means." He nodded solemnly, as if the word honor were a secret spell. Inside the academy, she was greeted by cadets who had grown up hearing her story, the woman who had faced the system and won. Some looked at her with awe, others with gratitude. But she didn't see herself as a legend. She saw herself as a reminder of how easily power could forget its duty. After her lecture, a talk on ethics and resilience, an older instructor approached her, tears in his eyes. "Dr. Carter, I served under General Hale," he confessed quietly. "I believed him. I believed the lies. I'm sorry." Evelyn's reply was gentle. "Then teach them not to repeat it. That's all the apology I need." Outside, she sat on a bench beneath a cherry tree while her son played nearby with toy soldiers. Each time he knocked one over, he set it upright again, whispering, "Try again." She watched him, smiling through a sudden wave of emotion. Try again. That was her life's lesson condensed into 2 small words. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mason. News from the bureau. Hale passed away this morning. Heart failure. Evelyn read the words twice, then set the phone down beside her. The air seemed to still. She hadn't thought about Marcus Hale in months. Not with anger, not even with pity, just absence. Now that he was gone, she felt nothing except a faint, quiet release. Justice had already been served. This was the echo finally fading. That evening, she attended a small memorial at the Phoenix Foundation. The boardroom was filled with staff, veterans, and new volunteers. Photos of women who had graduated from their programs lined the walls, faces once haunted, now radiant with purpose. Mason stood at the podium, introducing a new scholarship fund for single mothers in the military, the Liam Ward Initiative. Evelyn's chest tightened at the sound of Liam's name. When it was her turn to speak, she stood at the front, her voice soft but clear. This foundation began as an act of survival, but survival isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of responsibility. We don't heal alone. We rise together. Applause filled the room. Afterward, Mason joined her on the balcony overlooking the city lights. "You did it," he said. She shook her head. "No, we did." He glanced at her son, asleep in a stroller beside them. "You ever tell him about his father?" Evelyn looked at the sleeping child. "One day, but not the version the world knew. I'll tell him his father was a man who taught me how dangerous power can be and how strong truth must be to stand against it." Mason smiled faintly. "That's mercy?" "It's balance," she said. They stood together in silence as the city below pulsed with light and renewal. A new banner hung across the Phoenix Foundation's entrance. "From fire, we rebuild." The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of blossoms through the air. Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the warmth of it wash over her. The fight was over, the circle complete. Justice had not only come full circle, it had been reborn, just like the woman who dared to chase it. So that's how the story ends. But maybe not really. Because if you're still here, listening right now, then something in Evelyn's journey must have touched your heart in its own quiet way. You see, this story wasn't just about betrayal or revenge. It was about rebirth. About learning, like the Stoics taught, that we don't control what happens to us, only how we rise from it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The fire that burns inside you can turn anything that falls into it into light and flame." That's what Evelyn did. She turned pain into purpose, loss into healing, and silence into strength. Maybe that's what life keeps trying to tell us, that even when everything feels broken, there's always a part of you ready to rebuild. So my friend, if you're facing your own storm, breathe. Let it shape you, not shatter you. And when you rise, do it gently, do it bravely. Because that's what real power looks like. If this story moved something inside you, give it a like, share it with someone who needs hope tonight, and don't forget to subscribe, because here, we tell stories that remind you how strong the human heart can be.